I thank everybody for coming. I think we may have a few other people trickling in, but we will get started. So for the sake of time, I'm going to yield my time on opening remarks and go ahead and start with attendance. Drew Freeman.
Here, conflict, COC funded agency.
Indian Pungarcher.
President, no conflict.
Jamie Villegas.
Present, no conflict.
Liz Mallard.
Present, no conflict.
Dr. Exigria Inslee.
Present, no conflict.
Deanna Allen Robb.
Present, no conflict.
Michelle Southard.
Present, no conflict.
Andrea Hancock. Okay. There you go. Meredith McLeod Jolin. David Lango Martin. H.D. Stovall.
Present, I serve an ARPA-funded agency.
Catherine Knowles.
Present, no conflict.
Alyssa Fernandez. Rico X, present, no conflict. Ashley Horton. Lizzie Goddard. Jaha Martin.
Present, no conflict.
David Lango Martin.
Present, I'm employed by a funded agency, COC funded.
Councilwoman Erin Evans. Councilman Jacob Coupin. Councilman John Rutherford.
Present, no conflict.
And Alyssa Fernandez. There's space on the end. All right. At this time, we want to take a moment of remembrance and a moment of silence for those that passed away in the month of January. Reginald Reggie Campbell, Ty Jones, Sharon Conyers, Willie Johnson, Margaret Davis, Carl Knox, and Jimmy Ray Dunn. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. You all have received the minutes from the January meeting. Are there any comments or adjustments to the minutes? Jamie.
Yes, I would like the minutes to reflect that I was present at the meeting.
You definitely were, and I actually specifically requested that you be reflected. So yes. Any other adjustments?
Same for me. I was present.
Okay.
I would like the minutes to reflect mine and Hannah's conversation about the OMB standards and
Yes.
continuing that work. Thank you.
Okay. With those additions, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those that are in favor of the approving the minutes with those adjustments, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair that the ayes have it. Oh.
Late to the party, I also was present at the meeting.
Okay.
Also late to the party. I was also present at the meeting.
All right. All right. Do it.
After review, it appears that I am also not listed on the meeting minutes.
Okay. Do we? Was anyone else
We did have a quorum, so.
We did have a quorum. All right. Andrew, do you have all those notes? Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, I don't see Councilman Coupin's name, and I do recall him arriving.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, he did come on, I think, the very back end of the meeting. Councilman Coupin. All right.
Mr. Chair, motion to reapprove the minutes as amended. Second.
Yeah, thank you. Wait, before I call the question, any other people missing? Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, opinion of the chair that the ayes have it. So those minutes will be approved with the adjustments that have been noted. Before we do not have any public comments, but I did want to request an amendment to today's agenda. I needed to add Michelle Southard. So if you remember, she had made a reference to the race and ethnicity data. And so there was a conversation in last month's meeting. And so we did want to make sure that that is added as new business for today's conversation. So can I get a motion to approve that adjustment to today's agenda?
So moved.
All right. It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of adding the conversation around race and ethnicity data to the agenda, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. The ayes have it. Okay, so going to unfinished business. If you all recall, there was back in December there was a request from City Council to basically have OHS in conjunction or in partnership with HPC to present a contingency plan in light of the gaps of, or the proposed gaps of federal funding. And so I'm going to hand it off to Allison. I think you have a slide deck in front of you. And so I'm going to have Allison talk through that. And this is really our opportunity to ask questions and make sure that we're able to, add feedback for the presentation that will be given in March to Metro Council. So I will hand it over to Allison.
Always petrified of hitting the wrong button. Okay, morning everybody. So we spoke about this at the last HPC meeting, but in December, when there was still just a lot of uncertainty as to where things lay with HUD, Metro Council passed a non-binding resolution asking OHS to really come back with some information for them, a report that includes sort of the plan for the clients that are currently in COC-funded housing to maintain that housing, and any sort of contingency planning around the space where we were with that uncertainty in funding. There was a pretty good, robust discussion at the Budget and Finance Committee about really what their vision was for that and what they were looking for with that. And part of that was also, a good, clear encapsulation of what the COC program funds, why these the scope of the work and why these programs are really important. And so we have begun doing that. So in November, OHS started convening weekly contingency planning NOFO sessions to talk through the changes that were happening and to talk through, where are agencies looking to pivot, how can we plan together, how can we create a shared narrative that can be really impactful as we, may need to advocate for more funding or, educate stakeholders about the importance of these projects. Really, their primary concern was with, COC funds potentially not coming through for the next contract year. Obviously, Metro signed on to a lawsuit challenging a lot of the conditions in the NOFO. that lawsuit is not over yet. They're still, working towards a judgment, but it seems like they are going to get there. The preliminary injunction was granted, striking down the changes that were made in the most recent NOFOs. And so, while that situation is ongoing, while it's not over, it's not settled, the court has, told HUD that they need to make moves towards renewing the current projects for another year. This was also part of the appropriations bill that was passed was it just last week? The last few weeks run together. But the appropriations bill that was passed also contains some, I'm not going to get too into the weeds, but it contains some provisions for if time goes by without certain contracts being issued, that those projects will be automatically updated. So that, I think, provides like the primary answer to the question that council was asking us about the people in these projects, because it seems extremely, we're going down a path of contracts being renewed. HUD basically sent out communication saying that, any project that wants to renew as they are can do so. And the deadline to inform HUD of that was Monday, and we did do that. So I just wanted to kind of give people, that's the lay of the land where we start, because sort of in a sense, the planning that was asked for, we sort of already have a path right now, but I still think that having this information is really important, because I do think that with whatever NOFO comes next, we're still probably going to have a need for a shared narrative. We're going to have a need for community stakeholder understanding of the importance of these programs. So in working with the community during these weekly meetings, we have created an impact report. It is a draft. It says draft at the top, so I just want to let everyone know this is not final, but we wanted to share with you guys what we had. So with that, again, this is not final. There are some things on here that need to be updated. For example, there's space on here for client stories. Stories that will be, right, like names will be changed and they won't be identifying, but just to sort of talk about the impacts of these programs. That's not filled in yet. We're still working on this. We still have another month or so before this is due to council. Additionally, I think the program breakdown at the end of the funding amounts, I think, was last year's funding amount, so that just needs to be updated. But we wanted to share this with you guys. It's very similar in some ways to the impact report that we created last year, right around this time last year, really talking through how many clients do these programs serve? What sorts of clients do they serve, right? So folks with children, folks with disabilities, folks that are veterans or survivors of interpersonal violence. It talks through the impact to small businesses and to just like the ecosystem in general as far as rental assistance, the number of landlords that receive rental assistance through this. And then we've also included a little bit more narrative discussion, because obviously the situation has changed quite a bit from last year. And so really outlining how the situation with HUD is unfolding, and just why this is still really important. So we wanted to put this in front of you. Certainly if you have any feedback, we would love to hear it. This is really created with the community in these weekly meetings, and I just want to thank lots of folks in this room who were very involved in those meetings and came and shared lots of thoughts and lots of concerns. We have the group that was meeting has decided that instead of having those weekly, they're going to back those down to once a month, which I think is everybody seemed to think that was appropriate. And so with that, this is our draft impact report. Hopefully this gives us a good kind of refreshed sense of what these programs are doing, why they're just completely essential to Nashville in general, and kind of the stakes that we're talking about whenever we're talking about potential funding interruptions. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
India?
I think the report is, especially some of the graphic pages, is laid out super well, and I think this is super helpful to try to illustrate to council members why this funding is so important. I was also curious, especially keeping the intent of the resolution in mind. Is there also a related packet talking about, okay, financially, what are the components of a contingency plan if we're at a similar position, next year, after the renewals are granted? Just talking about, what's going on in the contingency planning meetings, what other sort of pockets of money are we considering? Would there be a point where Metro would consider not using funding, like it's been discussed, to continue to house new people? And then basically what point would we have to get to then pivot to using Metro dollars or like OHS budget dollars specifically to keep people housed if we're in a very similar position next year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would definitely, I would urge folks to watch that Budget and Finance Committee where it was discussed, because the resolution is pretty short. It's only a page or two. And we had a lot of questions about, and I know I talked about this at last month's meeting, but we had a lot of questions about, like, what exactly is this asking of us? There is language in the resolution about the Metro budget, but was the intention for, like, Metro budget dollars to fund COC projects? Like, in that, it was probably a half an hour at least conversation. In that conversation, it kind of came out really clearly that was not what the council members were looking for. That was not the intent that they expressed in the meeting. It was really more that they were very concerned about these programs, and that I think they just wanted to kind of open up the mindset of, like, there are lots of tools available, whether it be Metro funds or whether it be private donors or philanthropy or other state or local funding. And I think that that's a very fair question, because, like, while this addresses where we are right now, and sort of how things will unfold in the next year, right? Like, I think there's still a lot of question marks about the funding. There's still a lot of question marks about how the community wants to pivot and move forward if this funding is interrupted at some point. And the council members made it very clear. I can't remember who it was. I believe it was Councilmember Welsh who said, the Metro budget can't replace lost COC funds. That's not their intention, because it's just not possible. We receive almost $12 million in Metro funds. The budget of our department is far, far less than that even. But I think that that's a fair question, and I think that if folks have specific, other federal sources that they think that we should consider, other state sources, local sources, philanthropic sources for us to include in this, we'd be very happy to do that.
India?
Yeah, just to respond, I just think, this is an impact report, and that's great, but I think the resolution also outlined, what is the contingency plan, right? Again, what is going to happen if or when these COC dollars don't exist? And so, yeah, just having some of those plans documented, because I think we're going to keep falling into the same scary position with HUD year after year, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Allison, I think to that end, one of the things that I was kind of looking for is not necessarily a full drawn out contingency plan just because of where we are. We know that there's additional work, but I would even, as a starting point, there's a lot of great data that's in here, and so my feedback or suggestion would be, if the proposed NOFO wasn't blocked, based on this data that we have here, what is the financial impact of that? What is the numeric, how many individuals would that potentially impact? So I think you have the data here, but I think to even have a numeric kind of figure that represents impact in terms of 2/3 less, and that dollar amount, that would be a great starting point, just as a suggestion.
Yeah, and we have some of that in here, or as far as I understand what you're saying, but we can sort of for lack of a better term, kind of punch it up, or try to make it visually impactful, because we do have the number of households that are impacted, the number of people that are impacted, the monthly amount. Somewhere on here, I believe we have the number of staff members that are covered by COC grants that would lose their jobs or be otherwise affected. Yeah, 37 employees. But I agree. A big part of what we wanted to do with this was really make the stakes really clear for what these projects do. But if there are particular points like that you think are the most important to highlight, we would be happy to do that for sure.
Before we get to India, I want to get a couple other voices.
I hear your point, India. Also, in terms of providing feedback, you all spend a lot of time meeting with all of these agencies and talking about contingency planning. And so I think that's also something worth highlighting in terms of this has been a conversation with the PEC, the Performance Evaluation Committee, starting this conversation to know what the severity of the situation is, what organizations who are COC funded intend to do or not, can do or can't do. I think that part also can be helpful information here. And to India's point, we will collect data, we will compile data, and the question will then become, and then what do we do with it? What action do we intend to take? Is it a fundraising strategy, a public-private partnership fundraising strategy to, essentially in a year and a half raise $12 million? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that's where we're trying to get to is how do we then, what action are we really going to take once we've got all this information compiled?
Any other questions? April?
Sorry, I have a short arm. I was holding it up there. I think a couple of really important things to note as well. Not only the work that's happening in PEC, the work that's happening in the contingency planning meetings, but also there's contingency planning meetings that's happening within Metro. And so whether that is our finance team, Metro Legal, the mayor's office is heavily involved in what does that look like. But I think that a lot of it will come from, we at this point, if funding is finally approved at this point, we have a year to understand what does that look like. And contingency planning for the agencies should start at that point and really should not stop, which is why we have not discontinued those meetings. But that's where a lot of the work will happen. Who's willing to change their program or modify their program to fit the needs of the new NOFO that may come out? We kind of have a snapshot of what that's going to look like, and it gives us this amount of time to work toward that. I think we are thinking worst case scenario, when really it could be modifying, it could be subtle changes in programming, and some programs that have already started leaning that way as it relates to contingency planning because they know what's to come. So I think being mindful of that, I do want to state that, there's been multiple national leaders that'll say there's no local government that will be able to sustain the loss of federal funds. And so contingency planning starts like it's across the board, which is why we're meeting with the agencies. PEC is heavily involved, and then the mayor's office and finance on what does that look like. I think mayor's office and finance have reached out to multiple philanthropic organizations on what is their role in this. Faith-based, we're looking to do some network expansion. Faith-based organizations, what's their role as well? So I don't want us to be so narrowly focused on will Metro replace these dollars, because there's probably no way they will replace a full $11 million. But how do we supplement? And that's kind of the goal for us.
David?
That's a good point. How does Metro supplement the potential loss, right? And so there's a lot of worst case scenario thinking and discussion, but this isn't an all or nothing. So based on the NOFO that we saw last year, this is not going to be, it's not likely to be a $12 million loss. We're likely to see $5 million to $6 million displaced in permanent housing specifically. So I think that's the question that I want to see is how can Metro, that's what I want to see answered. How can Metro potentially supplement at what level? And to India's question, at what point would that happen? What would need to happen to have a commitment of any existing or potential Metro funds to supplement a loss of permanent housing funding?
I rarely do this, but I would be remiss to not acknowledge Councilman Rutherford and maybe get his thoughts on this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that supplementation is really the critical piece here, because I think that in terms of securing additional funding. When it comes to Metro's budget, as everyone knows, that starts with the mayor's office. In terms of the council, we tweak around the edges. If you know the process of the budget, that's what the council does, is tweaks around the edges, and that is really small compared to the overall budget. And that's just simply part of how a strong mayor system works in terms of local government. And so I think the onus is on all of those who speak to this to make sure that you're communicating with the mayor's office and the mayor's staff. And I know that the mayor's office and the mayor himself is, of course, very partial to this issue. And so I'm not giving criticism of the mayor's office. I'm just stating the fact that that's really where it begins in terms of what Metro can do. And so we have to make sure that the mayor's office is on board and part of this conversation. And so that's my 2 cents on it.
Drew?
April, to your point that the agencies are going to have to be somewhat flexible and willing to adjust to to play the game as it's being played. Is there a world where OHS could fund like strategic planning for agencies that can't afford that as they try to navigate that space?
Thank you for that. I think they're a part of our strategic planning refresh or changing, or after the retreat, that's definitely something that we can talk about. And I wouldn't think of it as a strategic planning for each individual agency, but much more COC-wide. We do have some COC dollars that definitely could help with strategic planning and or strategic planning that aligns with the route in which the federal government is going. And I do want to say the mayor's office is heavily involved in our strategic planning. We were meeting with them once a week, that I think is now being bounced back to not once a week as well, just like the community meeting. I think it's every 2 weeks or once a month at this point. And we're in the middle of pulling things together for budget season. So I don't want us to be so narrowly focused on what we have versus what we need to ask for. And so there are large asks for, as we're sunsetting ARPA dollars, there's large asks that are coming in, not just for where we are right now. So,
and I know we mentioned reaching out to a consultant to help us through the strategic planning process. Would we start with even the contingency plan? Would that be under their kind of guidance as we look forward? I mean, that's a big part of our plan going forward, I would imagine.
So we have 2 sets of HUD TA that's been working with us through this process, and both of them have said they can be a part of strategic planning. Once the NOFO is finalized this year, they can't really communicate with us right now, but once this one is finalized, they too are watching some of the federal changes. So whether it's ICF or Cloudburst, we have both of those that's been kind of going along with us, and they both have said they can come to help with that as well. So I think a local facilitator, strategic planning, along with our HUD TA would be ideal.
Michelle?
I had a quick clarifying question on the program breakdown sheet. At the bottom, it says that the numbers are, that you weren't able to get an unduplicated number, and that if a person was counted for transitional housing and then moved into supportive housing, it would count in both categories. I'm wondering if that is organization specific. So maybe an example is if someone from the Mary Parish Center was part of the rapid rehousing, they would count in that total number. And then if they also were a part of the DV joint TH and RHH domestic violence, is it within the agency specific? Okay. And then just one question. I use the Mary Parish Center because I think they're the heroes. The 1650 of number of people, 100% not doubting that that's not possible, and if it was, they would definitely be able to do it. But just wanted to confirm that.
I think that's a typo. Yeah. They are heroes, but that is a typo.
Okay. Thank you. Draft, that's true. That's right. Okay. Thank you.
I very much appreciate you pointing that out because we will fix that. That is why this is a draft.
Any other questions or thoughts on that? Dion?
I would suggest, if Chair, you were open to the suggestion, that this be a standing agenda item, maybe once every other month, or once if we need to look at it once a month, but at some frequency that we can continue to keep track and offer suggestions and offer support as we can.
Duly noted. I would agree. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. All right. So the next on the agenda, and this is just more of just like an update. So in the last executive committee meeting, one of the discussion items was the topic of compensation for lived experience. I think, as you all know, this has been a ongoing saga issue for I guess well over a year. And so I think that we are approaching kind of at least a finish line of resolving that. And if I may ask Director Calvin if there are any updates relative to the I think like the transition of funding from the planning grant in a second. But what we discussed was just in the next general COC, General Continuum Care meeting, we want to push forward a motion that would essentially shift the CAB, which is now, I think, known as the lived experience cohort, and officially shift them from under HPC and as a ad hoc committee of the general COC. And this particular structure was based on just I think back in October, we had a very robust meeting with Derek, really going over structural recommendations, and it was agreed that that was the best based on just the restrictions and HPC being connected to Metro. This was like the best structure for that to happen. So we, just to facilitate that process, we wanted to go ahead and make that a formal thing structurally. And then I don't know if there are any other updates as it relates to transitioning the planning grant funding to OHS to at least begin the process of distributing that. So April, if you could give an update on that.
Yes, so the planning grant has been redlined because it was a part of the King County original lawsuit, so there was some language in there that needed to be redlined. It's been redlined and signed by MDHA and signed by me maybe 2 days ago, and we'll hit Metro Council's agenda in the next 2 council meetings, I guess. Hopefully, if it doesn't make it on this one, it will make it on the next one. I don't have the deadline dates in front of me. So all of that that's the only thing that's left, is for it to go through Metro Council and to get sent back to the federal government.
So just as a FYI, that obviously the funding component is the kind of the final thing that will make compensation flow again. But again, I think on just with the conversation with the executive committee, we wanted to at least provide the structural runway for that to occur. And then I think the other step would just be to put out a RFP for a non-COC funded entity to be responsible for the disbursement of those funds. So that's still just an added step, but it was of our opinion that we would at least just make sure that we provide the structural runway for that to happen. So any questions on that? This was just more of an update. Jamie?
Yes, so my first question is this going to alter the how a cab works on their organizational level? Is it going to require any changes to the cab bylaws or how the cab operates? And also, what's kind of the kind of draft timeline for resuming payments?
I can answer the first question. So at our meeting, we did have former chairperson Kenna, who was present, and so she spoke to that. And so it was of her opinion that this change would not necessarily alter the structure of CAB per se or decision making. And in fact, she felt that it would actually kind of enhance the work because she felt like there were hindrances. So outside of compensation, there were hindrances in terms of just ways in which they were meeting, so on and so forth. So she was very supportive of that move, and we definitely talked to her about getting her input on that. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Do we know if there's any deadline issue in relation to this coming before council? I know there's some hesitation in terms of what meeting it would come before. And so are we up against a deadline in any way?
The only deadline would be the filing deadline. After I sign, it needs to go back to finance, to legal, probably to grants team, and then whatever those deadline dates are in order for it to be in front of you all.
Well, I was referencing the grant itself in terms of deadlines because, okay, so then we're not facing a late file at council or anything like that. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get an answer to my second question, and I wonder if there is even an answer. But whether or not, what would be the kind of the draft timeline, for resumption of payments?
So I thank you for that question, Jamie. I do want to go on record of saying that, once we go through the process of Metro Council finalizing and approving, the next steps would be the scope of work or the RFP and an agency coming on saying that they're willing to take on those duties, roles, and responsibilities. And so once that happens, then payments will resume based on that agency's capacity to be able to serve. And so throughout this process, we've worked very diligently. I think OHS has worked very diligently in trying to ensure payments were made. We started the payment process and all the way up until we realized that the charter was the concern. There is no delay on OHS's part in payments resuming. It would just be a matter of the RFP moving forward, a agency coming online, and probably one other step, which would be the charter amendment. I think that's the two things that would need to happen.
And just to follow up, is the RFP going to be also going to be kind of stating, or it's going to be up to the organization managing the funds to determine the amount of payments and how those payments are made, such as gift cards, direct payments, etc.?
I think it would depend on the organization that applies and what capabilities they have.
Angie? Just for the record, if we could notate Angie Lawless present for today's meeting.
And I have a conflict, but I just wanted to for my personal thing, and more of a comment, just to say, as this happens, and I'm supportive of it, but as it happens, I just would ask that the executive committee continue to think about keeping the lived experience voices involved in this area, because I find that very valuable. And if we start separating that, I'm just worried that will get lost. So.
Any of my executive committee members want to speak on that? I mean, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but do y'all want to? But I think that we've talked extensively about that concern as well. You want to?
No, We echo that. We think this will give them more of a voice, or more duplicated voice than an echo, maybe. But they are absolutely important in every aspect of this work. Yeah, so we appreciate you saying that.
Alyssa?
Where is the YAB in this, the Youth Advisory Board, that also contains people with lived experience? Just wondering if they need to be, if they're considered part of this, if they need to be explicitly named. But I'm also aware that that was created kind of like a requirement for federal grants. So just wondering if they can be added or if there's a reason why they can't.
I think that that's a important delineation, and I think that there have been loose conversations about that, but I think that the biggest priority was CAB, but I think that can be something that's brought up from a general membership perspective as well. So. HG?
I fear the YAB has not met since we did not receive the renewal of the YHDP grant, and that troubles me.
Yes, I'm aware that there is a committee, but they haven't been able to meet for whatever reasons. But I just wanted to make sure that even the idea of them is still there, and probably similar to the CAB as far as reasons why they are not able to come together. So just wanted to know they do exist, they do have purpose, and I think if we're thinking of them as well as getting paid for lived experience, they do need to be explicitly named. I just want to make sure that we're not interfering with anything if we're going to take them out of under HPC, if there was some legal reasons when it comes to why they were created, if that's going to be an issue later for whatever reason.
I do want to echo the importance of I feel of the YAB. It's a very important voice, even though they have yet to meet this year and haven't met recently. Youth with lived experience is a very important component of the whole idea of homelessness. It's one that's not often talked about, but is often the most impactful, especially with these young people growing up and experiencing homelessness in a young age. That's going to color the entire outlook on life. And if we're going to ask them to volunteer their time and put work towards the community, I do think that it's something that they should be carried forth with the consumer advisory board, as they are also consumers, and the idea for the payments is for the same purpose. So I would recommend that the motion, general membership, include that the youth advisory board.
I appreciate all of those comments, and we'll make note of that and make sure that that is put on the agenda. Put as part of the amendment and recommendation. All right. Questions or thoughts on that? Okay. All right. Next, I wanted to shift to the conversation about race and ethnicity data. And I think that there was some information that was put in the packet, but I wanted to kind of yield to Michelle to kind of offer her perspectives. And I don't know if Kelly wants to get close to her mic or just to be on standby in terms of conversation as it relates to this. So Michelle, if you want to kind of yeah, Michelle, if you want to kind of just summarize, I think some of the questions that you had, and then we can kind of open into dialogue.
Yeah, thank you. So in November, during council, I mentioned that the race and ethnicity data was in one question where, and this was my mistake, that the previous OMB had it separated. So we've worked through that with email, and I think the question now is whether or not detailed race and ethnicity data is required by HUD, and if so, how that's captured, and if not, could it be captured? I think I don't know that there's a resolution that can happen here. And Rico, you had mentioned working with the HMIS and Data Oversight Committee. I think that's the name. And I'm wondering, now that we've had some conversations and, we've sent some stuff back and forth, if they have the scope to work on that. Just hoping that the council could help me understand the process of just looking into that and making sure that we're able to capture the gaps in data so that we can better serve groups that have been marginalized and minoritized, and that those data are present.
Hi there. Sorry I'm not as pretty as Hannah, but I'm standing in now that she's left. Sorry, I'm the queen of self-deprecating humor. But very excited to be back with you guys. Sorry. My question is, when you say the level of detail that you're wanting for this data, we are aligned with OMB's current standard 15 and the HUD, which requires race and ethnicity to be one question, but it is a multi-select. So the individual is able to pick as many variables as they like and to identify themselves as detailed or as simply as they choose to. So I just want to make sure that I understand what level of detail that you feel that we're missing, or that we are not doing a good job of, or that you would like to see clarified a little bit more.
Thank you. So you are doing a good job. So when I look at the race and ethnicity data, there's an unstructured other question. And I think in some of the guidelines, I know Vanderbilt worked to expand how we allow folks to identify their race and ethnicity. And some of the examples are listing out different countries or origins. And I think that is what I'm wanting to explore. I know some agencies, I know there's like a minimum that is to be there, but then looking through some of this, there's also requirements for detailed ethnicity reporting. And so just wanting to understand more about that.
Yeah, as far as an other, at this point in time, we do not have really an other that is used in HMIS. We have the required ones of Black, African American or African, white, Hispanic or Latino, multiracial, of course, if someone chooses multiple things, the American Indian, Alaskan Native or Indigenous, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, Asian or Asian American, and the Middle Eastern or North African. So we have all of those. In addition to that, the options available in HMIS are client refused or client declined to answer, and client doesn't know or data not collected. So there's not really at this point in time an other option. Anytime that we report other, so for instance on the monthly report, we report all of those racial identities and ethnic identities in the chart. The line below it then where it says, blank % were a different race or ethnicity, that is just us combining the remaining. So for instance, looking at the housed one, since it's just at the very bottom there, we list in that statement the Black, white, and Hispanic, since those are the largest populations, and then anyone who identifies as something else, because it is such a small percentage, we just combine that into that last percentage. If that is something that you would like to see broken out additionally, we're more than happy to do so. But that detail, it's everything is there with the numbers above that in that chart. And we always make sure that whatever we are reporting, that we are fully reporting every race and ethnicity that our population identifies as.
Thank you. That was a question of mine also with the narrative part, below the graphs. The end is 2% were a different race and ethnicity. Race and ethnicity are two separate things, so wording there, but what does that mean, different?
Different just means that it is not one that was specifically listed. So, for instance, that one line at the very bottom of the page says 58% were Black, 35% were white, 2% were Hispanic or Latino, 5% multiracial, and that 1% is anyone who did not fall into one of those categories. So looking at the graph above that, that would be individuals who were American Indian, Alaskan Native, or Indigenous during this month.
Yeah, it would be great to, and this could be an offline, I think, conversation, but maybe to articulate that differently. But yes, and sorry. So it is helpful to see this. It would be helpful if the narrative was a little more fleshed out, and also continue discussions about whether or not we can expand how people are identifying, just so that we can capture those minutia and the nuances there.
Most definitely. We will do our very best on that. I will most definitely flesh out those explanations below the charts to include everything, all of the percentages there. And we will do our very best to maintain the data and to give people as many options as they can have. Our only concern is staying within the lines that HUD has given us, especially with the different presidential directives and everything. But most definitely, we want people to be able to identify how they identify and to accurately be able to give that information.
Got it. Thank you. So would your recommendation be that I connect with the HMIS data subcommittee or committee?
Yes, the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee, we are meeting, I want to say it's the 28th. I will make sure that I get that correct date for you, but it is the fourth Monday of every month. We meet at 11 o'clock, and we would welcome you coming and speaking with us and seeing if there's something else that we, as the Data Committee and HMIS Oversight, can make sure that we are getting you the information that you need and that we are doing the best to describe our population.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to, the other agenda item of new business, I just wanted to reiterate that the HPC Retreat will take place on February 27th from 9 to 1. Breakfast and lunch will be served. And I think the primary focus for the retreat is really, I think, threefold. One, I think just to create a space for us to take a step back and just kind of acknowledge the work that has been done over the last several years. I think it's important to celebrate those wins and celebrate progress that has been made. I think that the bulk of the retreat will be to really take a deep dive of the entire strategic plan and to really take stock and evaluate what has been done, what's in progress, what has been held up. So just kind of clearly identify those elements. And then also, and then finally, given the climate that we're in, and, you know, when the initial strategic plan was created, we were in a significantly different climate. And so I think given the environment that we're in as it relates to funding and different things, we want to begin the process of doing like a SWOT analysis. And so what are those threats? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the COC, of HPC and OHS all involved? And then also what are those opportunities that we can look at? And again, I think the intent of this will be to kind of inform the building of a strategic plan. Just as a note, they're working on a scope of work to kind of put out bids for a consultant to assist with the strategic plan. So stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate that's going to be the spirit of the retreat. So I encourage everyone to come out. I know that this has also been broadcasted to our general membership, and so we would love for any and all to come out and participate in that effort. So it's at the North Precinct, and we'll continue to send reminders out around that. Oh, yes. Yeah, one quick, Drew, and then I'll have Kenna.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there any way possible that we can identify whoever our local consultant's going to be? It just feels like that's a valuable opportunity for them to be there at the retreat, even if it's just to hear. I know that it's a couple of days, but I think these are the things that are important, though. I know we've missed this opportunity, but I think the longer we wait to get someone in place, we're going to miss more of these opportunities. Yeah. So we got to move on that. And now, who's facilitating? Is that just the retreat? Is there I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're working on that part.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to say that I like to see that the retreat seems to be moving from precinct to precinct. But I'd like to just put in a plug that for the next one to be at the brand new Southeast Precinct. Thank you.
I remember at our last discussion, we kind of touched upon possibility of a tour of the overflow shelter. Is that something that we could possibly integrate into the retreat?
I would love that to be an opportunity, and definitely it can. Initially, we were thinking about having the retreat there, but we've hosted a couple of trainings there, and it is very hard on your back to sit at the cafeteria-style tables for longer than 2 hours. So we pulled that to make sure that people had comfort. But I think we're looking at right before or right after, using that as the field trip from the retreat.
So that was part of the selection for it. So it's near enough to where we could probably do it after, but yeah. So that was the spirit of it. Thank you for reminding me of that. All right, next up, I'm going to do an audible and bring Kenna up to give her report.
I hope you don't mind me cutting, April. I'm double booked this morning. Good morning, everybody. So again, my name is Kenna Hasler, and I'm here as your COC liaison. So wanting to give you some updates from committees. They're very brief because a lot of people didn't actually meet because of the storms, obviously, and people didn't meet prior to that. So very brief updates for you. So the committees that did not meet in January due to the ice storm were the CE Oversight Committee, the Charter Committee, and the Data and HMIS Oversight Committee. So those 3 committees will be catching up in February. Nominating and Mentorship Committee met yesterday. They are beginning the process to nominate a slate of candidates for the HPC. At next week's general membership, they will be using the Mentee to ask COC members what sectors or areas of expertise they would like to be represented in this year's slate. The PEC did meet last month and are gearing up for another NOFO drop in the coming months. Since the HPC recently approved the updated reallocation policy, they are going to begin considering reallocation for underperforming projects following the procedures outlined in the new policy. Sounds riveting. The charter met on Monday and discussed a timeline and strategy to complete the revisions to the charter. They're also reaching out to each COC committee to have them update their scope of work if needed. So this is a call for anyone who is on any of those committees to make sure that you are in your next meeting discussing whether you should have a scope of work update. The Housing and Opportunities Committee met and they are finalizing their permanent supportive housing developer guide to help more developers feel equipped to delve into the PSH space. The PIT committee had a debrief last week to discuss this year's PIT count. Overall, the feedback was the event went pretty smoothly, but there were helpful suggestions to improve for next year. The HMIS team is currently working on cleaning up the PIT data before submitting it to HUD. After HUD approves the submission, that data will be shared publicly, and those were our main updates. And then just a reminder that since the COC general membership meeting is next week, there were some questions or statements that were brought for you all, so I wanted to kind of read through those. I know last time Rico was your representative. Is that going to be the plan for next week? Okay, and just a reminder of this process, and I wanted to kind of take a minute because I know recently some people asked about the liaison process. So as a reminder, as the liaison, any COC member can approach me as the liaison with something to bring to the Homeless Planning Council. That's one of the biggest things. They do not have to go through OHS to voice it. They can send an email to me if they would like, and then I can bring their concern or question here as well. But at COC, we do offer the mentee as an opportunity for anyone to anonymously submit things to bring to this. So just a reminder that the goal is kind of to have me ferry information back and forth. So the statements that we had for the liaison from the last COC was that there was an ask for increasing outreach efforts short-term during cold weather. So that's a much bigger conversation. So I'm going to probably say that SWAP should be on that one. Similarly, what are ways, staffing changes at OHS due to ARPA funds ending ? So I'm going to say that I think the question was, what are there going to be staffing changes at OHS when the ARPA funds end? Because we know that there is some significant funding in OHS with that.
You want me to answer that?
If you have the answer.
I don't have the answer. We're in budget season. For the last 3 years, we have actually put those positions in our budget. And actually last year was pretty successful until we realized the city realized that there were underutilized ARPA funds in other budgets that they wanted to maximize. And so those funds were delivered to us at that point in time. I want to say the mayor is fully aware, the mayor's office is fully aware, and finance, they're fully aware of our OHS needs. And I think they're committed to ensuring that we have what we need as it relates to our staffing. My staff are back there giving me flutter eyes, and we talk about this quite often in our weekly meetings. And that's our priority one in our budget request again this year. Last year we were successful minus the additional funds that were actually brought to our office. So that was still counted as a success because that meant that was less funding that actually went back to the federal government for being underutilized by other metro departments. So I'm pretty sure we will be successful.
Thank you, April. And since you're talking, there was another one that said an update on the OHS audit was what was brought up. So it's just if we have an update, and if not, someone will probably ask that at the COC next week.
Yeah, so, during the same time, the same person has leveraged an audit, an investigation, all along on the same scope of work. So I want to be clear on that. There's two things that have the same scope of work, but was put out by the same person 2 different times. Our department is working closely with both the auditor and the investigator. They're, I think, looking to sync the work. Several of the agencies that are funded probably have received emails from us because an audit for OHS as a funder also means an audit of service providers and their scope of work who we're funding. So several agencies may have received information from us that says, hey, we need this, or hey, have you submitted that? And that's kind of where we're at with the auditor investigator building the scope of work and then testing the scope of work, and results, will come shortly after that. I think several agencies here have been through an audit. It doesn't happen overnight, especially when the auditor and the investigator does not fully understand your full scope of work. When I first started here with Metro, we were under a programmatic audit. Maybe 2 months after I walked through the door, probably leveraged. So anyways, we were under an audit then. It took a whole year for them to fully understand our scope of work. What is CE? How do you test that versus what federal government is requiring? How do you test that versus national information? And so it took a very long time to build that scope of work and then having the tools in place to test it. And so that's where we are with these two bodies of work as well.
Thank you. I think I partially addressed this. So one of the questions was, what are ways that this body, as in the COC, can influence the agenda at HPC? The note was sometimes they don't feel important current events make it to the agenda here at HPC. So one way for just anyone watching or anyone here is by having it come through the liaison. I will always be a standing agenda item. So that is one way. If there's something you have a question about, a current event you want something, that's part of why we created this role, is that I can come and I can bring it up. But if anyone else from HPC has any statements on how you would like people to be able to bring things, I will leave that open.
Yeah, and just to note, this was also discussed in the last executive committee meeting, and so I think just as a standing item on our end, we actually reviewed that part, and so I think it'll be kind of a standing item from an executive committee standpoint to review those items that come from the mentee, as well as just other things that may bubble up. And so I think, again, this liaison process is still like an evolving piece, and so we're trying to get better at that and just making sure that there is a free flow of feedback that is going both ways. So thank you for that.
Thank you. The others are more kind of statements, kind of concerns from the community, which is still an ask for options for people who are on the sex offender registry for housing. I know we've discussed this on and off the past few months, and especially when we hit cold season, we're a little bit less concerned because we have the overflow shelters and there's a little bit more flux, but I do think that is something for this body to start looking at as spring is coming, because shelter options will be reduced once cold weather is gone for individuals on the registry. The other question of concern from the COC was, what are resources and the documentation process for undocumented individuals experiencing homelessness? So kind of the COC wants to have clarity on what options do people have. I think especially given the current federal things going on, and especially with the new NOFO, that does seem like a bigger discussion for us to have as well as a community for some things. What are we going to put, I would speak plainly, what are we going to have in policy and what are we going to have where there are some advocacy groups that will not go through this to do their work, who are not federally funded. And the last one was identity protection monitoring for data breach victims. I know we discussed this at the last COC or last HPC. So I believe, April, you shared that Metro was going to be paying for that monitoring. Am I correct on that? Right. Okay. So I think that one has been addressed. And then this last one, I don't actually get the HPC COC engagement with the UHLC. I don't know what that is.
It's the Unified Housing Strategy Leadership Council.
There we go. So the question of the COC was, they would like consistent updates on that. And that's all I have for us, unless anyone has anything for me. Thank you for letting me cut. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kenna. All right, director's report.
All righty, a couple of thoughts here. I was going to talk a little bit about PIT, but I think Kenna covered that. I will address that letter. There is a letter that was drafted between our department and ITS that we will send out to the HMIS individuals whose data was disclosed on, can't remember the exact words, but so anyways, that letter was finalized by us yesterday, and going through a disaster and a lot that's happened in the last 2 weeks. Yesterday was the earliest that we could finalize that, and we sent it to legal yesterday afternoon. So once legal approves it, only thing that would need to be added would be the QR code or the code that they will need to do their credit monitoring. OHS is committed to covering the cost of that credit monitoring. So that's that. I think we talked a little bit about the pilot of MRF and the pilot of the NASH, which NASH is the new tool for the vulnerability assessment tool that our community has been working on for some time. and that both of those were picked up for a national conference to be shared. So we're working with our group and others that may be actively involved in those two pilots and gathering data and information. I think we talked already a little bit about budget season, so I won't bore you with that. One of the main things that we're looking for is funding that covers or comes in to assist with the funding cliff of ARPA. And, you know, this is prime time for that level of engagement. We have multiple things that we're utilizing, which would be data, the interim strategies that our community supported, the outdoor strategy, along with the unified housing strategy. So we're going to use all of those tools to help lobby our council members. Let's see, a couple of other thoughts. I want to talk about the cold weather shelter. Nashville has not been without its level of disasters in the last 5 to 10 years. It's been a lot. I want to publicly thank all of the nonprofits that stepped up, stepped in, and helped. Definitely thank churches and individuals that went above and beyond to help save the lives of our Nashville citizens. I don't know if you all know Chief Swan, but I think he was a quarterback in previous years because he quarterbacked this thing here. It was awesome to watch and to be a part of. OHS, I want to also give a big shout out to my OHS team members that are here. Above and beyond the call of duty, above and beyond the call of duty. I'm running 2 24-hour shelters. Thanks to the Salvation Army for opening their doors. At the call, one call is all it took, and they opened the doors, and Major Maccabee drove in from Hendersonville in the ice storm to unlock the doors for us. We didn't need it that night, but it was allowing us to prep and get ready for the upcoming week, and so I greatly appreciate that. And Fire and OEM provided so much care to this building. Fire, OEM, water, general services, and the mayor's office. Pre-planning provided so much care to the building as far as the electricity and the plumbing, things that they provided assistance with during the off-season so that this building can be up and running for exactly what we needed it to be up and running for. And then the forward thinking of bringing a large generator to put there behind the shelter during this ice storm. It was already in place like a week in advance. And so we did lose power there with about 250 to 300 people in the building. It's a little scary. It's a little scary. But, you know, they had already given us instructions on how to turn on the generator, what to do, so we didn't have to wait for someone to come. And within 5 minutes, we were back lit like the Taj Mahal in the community because the lights were out all around us. I do want to say that our unhoused population was also served with, in that shelter, with people that were actually housed. On multiple of occasions, we had people that lived in the neighborhood or that, you know, was dropped off because they did not have utilities and heat at their own home. I mean, we saw people coming with their pink Uggs and their Louis Vuitton bags. And, you know, some felt a little bit out of place, but some just said, it's unbearable and I need to stay here. So we either allowed them to stay there or tried to get them to the warming shelters that came online as well. And our unhoused population also frequented some of the Red Cross shelters that were up and running. And so towards the end, our office was instrumental in helping to decompress the shelters. I do want to give a couple of more special thanks to like NDOT. NDOT went above and beyond. We had Roadway, who you all know is one of our interim sites that lost water through a water main break, and NDOT was instrumental in getting porta potties there. Just one phone call. Philip Jones and Director Diana Allison, they go above and beyond. Because of the work of everyone, MNPD not only brought individuals to our shelter on a regular basis, they were cold patrol, but they were also Ubers and Lyfts for our team in order to be able to get to work, because there was no way that we could do this work without having people in place. Our leadership team was instrumental in getting hotels and, there was a lot of planning that went into place on the front end of this storm, hoping that we wouldn't need it on the back end, but we needed every bit of it and probably a little bit more. Everyone band together. Are there things that we have learned from a storm like this? Absolutely. Are there things that we can do better? Absolutely. But I'm proud of where we are. There is a one-pager in front of you. Last year, cold weather shelter ended at 46 nights. Tonight will be night 47 for us. So we're going above and beyond the meeting and exceeding. There was 13 days of 24 hours at 2 locations, which is unprecedented for this level of sheltering. There was 10 days of extended hours. There's a one-pager in front of you. I won't go over those numbers. Another thing that I'm really excited about is the amount of triage that happens between Room in the Inn, Nashville Rescue Mission, and Launchpad has been a part of those conversations, some as well. And during the height of our coldest season, right, it's typically about 5 to 10 days every year, typically 5 to 7 days every year where max level of triage is required. And you'll see on this document here, the highest number that we saw this year is 1422 triaging across all 4 of those sheltering options. And it's a little bit down from last year, but not much to be excited about. So a couple of other thoughts. You know, what we're learning from disaster relief is not only how to be more restorative, but also how to create resiliency in a system like this. So there will be an after-action plan that we'll be a part of as it relates to our unhoused population. And the week of the ice storm, there was 0 deaths related to individuals experiencing homelessness while in the middle of the ice storm. Now, on the other side of that, we did experience 2 deaths, which were not related to the weather. That's it for me. Any questions?
I first want to just allow space for another round of applause. You've been reporting. You haven't been a part of that. So I think you need to make sure they did an amazing job. My question is, how do we get this out beyond this room? Right? We get so much coming at us. How do we talk about the stories that are good and the successes and the wins that we do have? Like, what do we have a mechanism for that?
I just want to offer this. As one who, y'all know I go on and on about this shelter. And it's because I have seen the work that is done. What I do know is this body is really good at exemplifying the negative and what isn't working. And so what I encourage is that each of you, whether it's through your faith-based communities, your own organizations, your families, you can do drives. You can drop the things off. I've arranged 2 tours with folks so that they get this and they understand the magnitude of what it takes. And I think that when we talk about it seems like a lot of responsibility is left to OHS. The massive amount of work from the staff and what they do at that shelter in itself, I'm going to be honest, I've done a lot of shelter work. I probably couldn't work for OHS because I couldn't be trapped in this shelter. But it is also very humanizing, and it is beautiful work that is taking place. And when I say, I want to give a very special shout out because I don't think she's gotten the recognition she deserves. Yes, Director Calvin does it, but the shelter director, Tatiana, let me just say, yeah, this young woman, it is a gift and a calling in the way in which she serves these individuals. And her calm and peace, I told April, I had to call and say, I need to figure out how to bottle this up. Because I don't know, and it's not just about the way in which that she makes sure that the operations, it is the passion in which she talks about serving and what she does in terms of, and I know the staff, they do a lot of the deep cleaning prior to the contracting people. And so it's not that I know Director Calvin, she does make sure that this information gets out. Some of the things I saw in the news media was a lot, of course, but I did hate that, that there wasn't more highlight of what was being done for our unhoused people. But I give all kudos to them. I encourage people. We did a massive MLK drive to really look at how, and I know half of my people have no understanding of the impact and the detriment of what the trauma of poverty causes. And so I think that each of us have our own individual called to do that. So when we say, how do we get this out? It starts with each individual in this room, and that we can do this. There should be no reason that that shelter is out of pants, has all the needs that they have with all of this power sitting around this room. And so I just implore and encourage you all to keep that on your radar. And how do we do this, and how do we continue to serve with dignity to the point that we don't have this level of people needing to even seek shelter in these types of instances. But again, kudos to the team. Special shout out to Tatiana and all that really and truly make this happen. And even the way in which that facility stays clean. I mean, it is an absolute, not to put any type of religious, but when we talk about sort of this thing of a God wink, the work that these folks are doing absolutely is that. And so I thank each of you and just appreciate, and I know I will continue to try to do that as well. So that's my speech. I'm done with it. Thanks.
And I appreciate that. Just 1 second. I appreciate that perspective, and I think that's 100% true. I would love to suggest we get her here. So next meeting, we can celebrate her and that work that she's been doing and give her a public acknowledgement that we appreciate all of that Jaha said she was doing. So if that's possible, I'd love to see her here.
That is possible. She would love to be here. She was there at Metro Council last night. We were wanting to give her some flowers there as well. And then we thought we were off a week. It was so nice. We thought this whole week we would be in the 40s, 60s. Yesterday was so beautiful. Today is so beautiful. But tonight it drops down below 32 degrees for 3 consecutive hours. So she went home to go to bed because she'll be there tonight. But we'll make sure that she's here and on the agenda for next week. Not next week, next month. Another thing I do want to ask for a little bit of grace. When I hear you say, how do we get that out? We have this one pager that we were at the midnight hour finally able to get drafted and created yesterday. But we have some key members that are out on medical leave, FMLA. So Demetrius Cheney, Raquel Deluego, I don't know her new name or married name. Oh, okay, great. So we have key messengers that are out on FMLA. And so we have probably fallen short a little bit on the messaging and getting the information out there. The best we can do is making sure we're getting the information out there about being open. But as far as like highlighting some of the great work, more to come on that.
We're all messengers, so I appreciate that point.
Jamie.
Just speaking with members of the in-house community, there's definitely they're definitely very grateful and very thankful for the efforts of OHS in operating the shelter and just being, just by the grace of God that that nobody has passed because of this wet weather thing. I think that's a testament to how well our response is. I have a question about so we had people who ended up at, say, the warming shelters, the Red Cross shelters. In the future, in future disasters or things like this nature, is there a way we can integrate a coordinated entry, a person from coordinated entry to help kind of catch people who may not necessarily be in the system at those sites?
Thanks, Jamie. That's a great question. What we chose to do this time was use our outreach workers. I just want to say, just like us, we like choice, right? We like choice, we like opportunity, we like new. And so what we see is, Nashville Rescue Mission is open. And then when Room and Inn opens, there's a little bit of migration there. And then when OHS opens, then there's some more migration. Well, when there's fancy new Red Cross shelters, there's some more migration, right? And so we would even see our unhoused individuals coming back to our shelter with their Red Cross blankets. And we know where they've been for the last couple of days, right? And so that's part of it is choice. I think the other part is Red Cross has a model of where they won't turn anyone away. So a lot of the individuals that were there had been at our shelter, had been in Room in the Inn, was already heavily involved in our coordinated entry system, and we actually knew them by name. So whether I went to the shelter, Director Renee Pratt went to the Red Cross shelters, we were able to say, these individuals, are residing here for now. They have a place that they'll come back to. I think Red Cross was not familiar with it was a national Red Cross that came to Nashville. And so they were not familiar with all of the resources and outreach efforts and shelters, and maybe had been to other disasters like smaller towns that didn't have shelter operations or didn't have an overflow that even created an additional overflow. And so we had capacity within our system for them to come back. And so we were able to triage them there on site at the locations. Our office would not be able to split into doing 3 to 4, right? We were running this shelter, running the TSA overflow shelter. There would be no way that we could have placed people at the Red Cross shelters, but social services was there, Metro Social Services. They were there on site, and throughout the days, we were just there when it was time to decompress those Red Cross shelters so that we can ensure that our unhoused folks had a place to go back to Room in the Inn or back to our shelters. So we provided that level of transportation and triage, but I'm not sure if Metro Social Services did actually coordinated entry, or if I'm not sure of the services that they provided there, but that they have access to coordinated entry. So maybe that's something we can coordinate with them for next time.
2 more comments, India and then Angie, and then we'll move on for the sake of time.
Just really quick, if that after action report that you mentioned that OHS is participating in, and if that includes with like all the other Metro departments, we had a lot of folks experiencing homelessness report that they were using the Red Cross shelters, which was really great because some were closer to, where they were already staying. But we did have a fire marshal transport a couple because he said that at the fairgrounds, people experiencing homelessness weren't allowed to be at that shelter and they needed to be at the overflow shelter, but it was also during the middle of the day, so the overflow shelter wasn't open yet, and it was a couple, they had a lot of belongings, and so the mission wasn't something they didn't have anywhere to store their belongings. And so yeah, just giving that feedback of like getting, and I know that's a very impossible task of getting everyone on the same page, but yeah, it was just a really difficult situation where the fire marshal, transported them to our community center and said that they specifically, like to our face, weren't allowed to be at that shelter because they were experiencing homelessness. So just wanted to report that situation, and happy to provide more specific details if that's helpful at all.
I just had a quick question about the NASH. Is that something, when do we expect that to go into effect? What's the process for that, and when might we be able to see it?
I don't want to mess up all the dates, timelines, and all of that. I'm not sure if Dr. Talley, if you have any of that information in front of you. There is a work group, so there's 2 things. There's a CE Oversight Committee, and then there's a work group that's working within the community that has, kind of spearheaded it along the way as far as, and I think we actually presented the questions here before, so we can maybe share where we are to this point and or put it on the agenda for Chair, if you don't mind, if it can be added to the agenda for next month as well.
Thank you.
All right. Allison, do you have any comments or updates?
I know I gave a pretty good update on where we are with HUD, but just a few other little things. Just to piggyback off of that, because I just feel like I need to, I want to thank the HPC members who donated and contributed to the cold weather shelter. There were probably more, but I'm specifically thinking about Jaha, and Angie. Tons and tons of donations. Lizzie Goddard dropped off a couple 100 pairs of underwear, which we desperately needed, and pizzas for the staff, which was very kind. So we really appreciate everybody's help because it was a heavy lift, and so I want to thank all of y'all who contributed to that. Okay, I talked about the NOFO. We did inform HUD by the deadline on Monday that yes, we want to renew all of our projects. We'll keep you guys updated as we hear more. But contracts, hopefully, should be rolling in. They will go to individual agencies. They don't come to us because each agency's contract is between them and HUD, but we'll keep everybody updated on that. And then the only other collaborative applicant sort of update I wanted to give was about the point in time count, which, because of everything that's happened in the last few weeks, feels like it was 1,000 years ago, but it was actually only 3 weeks ago. But I just want to thank everybody. Many of the people in this room were volunteers at the point in time count, and we're very grateful. There were a lot of moving parts. We certainly supplied far more supplies this year than ever before, and I feel like the timing was strange because a lot of the volunteers were like, there's bad weather coming tomorrow. Are we really going to do this? But I think it worked out really well because we were able to reach a ton of people outside. We gave out just, I don't know how, like, food and hot hands and gloves and hats to so many people, bus passes, gift cards. And we were also able to inform everybody, hey, a horrible ice storm is coming. You need to get inside in the coming days. So obviously, like with a big event like that, there are improvements we want to make every year. But I'm just really proud of the fact that we were able to get out there and talk to a lot of people ahead of like a generational weather event. So
I do want to ask one question, if you don't mind, and probably. So shelter was open the night of the count, and not sure of how it relates to shelter count versus unsheltered count, because early on the number was really low as far as shelter. By the end of the night, it was pretty high, and not sure of how that affects the unsheltered count versus the shelter count, and if people were actually counted twice, maybe in their encampment or being brought into shelter. I'm not sure of how that works.
I'm looking at Kelly, but I know that a big part of what they're doing right now is going through the data and cleaning to try to remove duplicates like that to get the most accurate number that we can. But I do think that that's a very fair point for people to understand, is that like the sheltered and unsheltered number may change year to year, and it may change like a lot, but often that's not necessarily because the unsheltered population has changed that much. It's just that on cold nights, folks seek shelter more often than stay outside.
So there is a lot of extensive work that the HMIS team does. Last year and the year before, I worked on the PIT report. This year, it is Vi and Hannah that are partnering on it. But they go extensively through cleaning, checking every bit of information that we have to make sure there are no duplicates between the sheltered and the unsheltered, and no duplicates on the unsheltered between people who are interviewed and people that were simply observed who may have been sleeping. So it is extensive. I know that Vi and Hannah have been working nonstop on it, and they are making progress, but it is slow going because there is so much data. But we do everything we can to ensure that there is no duplication in those numbers.
And one last just incredibly quick thing is I agree with Drew that we are all messengers. We brought a stack of these handouts to the council meeting yesterday. There was a special called council committee meeting, Public Health and Safety and Transportation Committee meeting to talk about the ice storm. We were there. We were not asked any questions, but we were there and we were ready to share the story. But one story that I need to share is that there is one person on our staff, in addition to Tatiana, who was on site every single day that we were open, and that is April. April is on site, and she shouts out our staff a lot, but I want to make sure, like, she is there literally every single day that the cold weather shelter is open, there for hours. She really serves alongside the staff, so I just had to. Sorry.
All right, last item.
And I'm going to go through this so fast. First off, just to correct my statement earlier, the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee is actually on the 23rd at 11 o'clock at Edge Hill Library. So, Michelle, you have that written down. If anyone else would like to join, you're all more than welcome to come. Looking at the data here from the month of January, I'm just going to hit a few highlights. First off, we encountered 3,986 individuals experiencing homelessness in the month of January. As you can see, and as was requested, we have added that 13-month line there in the graph there so that you can see last January in comparison to this past month. Additionally, looking at housed, we managed to house 185 individuals experiencing homelessness in January. And special shout outs to the largest housers in January were Operation Stand Down with 26 individuals, the Nashville Rescue Mission with 20, and Safe Haven Family Shelter with 14. So way to go on those agencies. And we love seeing the number of house. So, are there any questions about the HMIS data? Yes.
So a question about because we're still having a separate chart for the Nashville Rescue Mission, and we've had data coming in from them for a little bit of time now. And I was wondering how much longer until we get a fully integrated, unduplicated data where it could all be on one graph.
Yes, so we are working on that. We did include the number of unique sheltered there. What I can say is that the missions housed data is included in that second half of the report of the housing data and how many individuals were moved into housing. It is my absolute hope, if nothing crashes and burns in the next month, to be able to begin to integrate that. And so our one caveat with that is that it will cause our numbers to go up quite profoundly because there are a number of individuals who have been utilizing the mission and have not been utilizing other resources. So we do anticipate our numbers looking a bit higher hopefully, fingers crossed, next month. But that is something that we are actively trying to do because we have heard this from multiple people in the community that you want to see that data all together. We want to see that too. So.
I cannot remember if it's you or Allison that gives the programmatic like spend down and services rendered handout, but I didn't see it this week or this.
Oh, the ARP report.
Yeah.
We can get that sent to you last month's. Yes, most definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to adjourn, and I encourage everyone to try to get here by 8:25 because we could have been done. I'm trying to be good on time, but we got to meet quorum, and we can't get that done unless people are here. So I just need to say that. I do know I know that we are looking to downsize by attrition, so hopefully that problem will be solved, but just encourage everybody to get here. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.